Maestro, April 13 and 14, Elgar and Beethoven. If there's a more beautiful cello concerto, save Dvorak, I don't know what it is, because Elgar is just, between his violin concerto and his cello concerto, there's some of my favorite music on earth.
And the violin concerto is rarely played. I mean, it has a renaissance now, but it's rarely played. The cello concerto, of course, part of the, one of the most important pieces in the repertoire. Interesting with the cello concerto for me, when I first performed it, I was just conducting Tristan at the time, and I paired it with Tristan. It did it in the same week when I did Tristan, the whole piece is basically a Liebestod. It's the whole piece is based on the Tristan chord, and on that motive that starts off Tristan. It's very, very interesting, and you see Elgar here as a pure Wagnerian. Now, what's even more interesting is when the piece is written in the aftermath of World War I. It's really like, for me, it's almost like a requiem to the victims of World War I. And this Liebestod going in there, and that an English composer would actually get close to one of the most important German composers, Wagner, it's actually also a sign of peace, and crossing the bridge, and that culture actually
And a reconciliation.
Reconciliation in a certain way. I don't think it was seen at the time that way, but to me it is, and therefore I think it really bonds extremely well with Beethoven Ninth, which is all about brotherhood, all about the inclusion, all about brotherhood and being one and coming together. So I think this is actually, it was a coincidence that we had Johannes Moser, and I wanted to change to Beethoven Ninth to celebrate, in a way, the new San Antonio Symphony, and after our turmoil. I would have never come up with the idea of programming the Elgar Cello Concerto on Beethoven Ninth, but now actually I think it's kind of a stroke of genius that these pieces are on one program together, and they really, the meaning of Beethoven Ninth becomes more important through the Cello Concerto, I think, in the beginning.
Elgar's music always seems so longing. You're reaching out for some harmonious ending. He gives it to you, but it's just such lush romanticism,
a
la Wagner. Lush romanticism without, well, he does have motifs in definitely.
He also has this
theme development.
And the ability of creating endless melodies, especially in his symphonies. You hear it in the first symphony, also in the second, where one intertwines with the other and then continues this lack of cadence. That's, of course, very Wagnerian, and Elgar knows very well how to place a cadence, especially in pomp and circumstance marches. But in his symphonic writing, he really elaborates it in a fantastic and beautiful way. And the Cello Concerto, I think, is the masterpiece of that.
But thankfully, there's this interregnum from Brahms to Elgar, who let loose with his symphonies that are just lush and full of wonderful melodies. But we're going to get to hear the cream, which is the Cello Concerto.
And the wonderful Beethoven Ninth.
And Beethoven Ninth and the Mastersingers.
And the Mastersingers. And I conducted Beethoven Ninth a lot. But the thing that, for me, is the most, the deepest experience with Beethoven Ninth was a production that I did with Maurice Béjart in 1996 in Paris. And then we toured it later to Japan. And that was a choreography of Beethoven Ninth, which was truly amazing. And the interesting thing what he did was he started it off but with an African drummer who was wheeled in on stage. And he sat on his drums. And then one of actually France's most interesting actors came on stage and cited from a poem by Nietzsche, which talks about the idea of doing Beethoven Ninth with dance. And then then the whole piece starts in the first movement with the two couples on each corner of the stage, and then of course the scherzo was a warlike movement, and then of course the slow movement, the most amazing pas de deux you can imagine, a real love song. But the most interesting thing then was the fourth movement. He brought all the themes back as before, as Beethoven does, and all the dances back. And then in the middle of the culmination of it, he brought in an African girl who completely improvised African dance in the middle of that. Everything else was really classical dancing, and she came in the middle. And at the end, the corps de ballet of 200 dancers came in, which was very multicultural, and was dancing the final scene on the final chorus of Beethoven 9. An amazing event, and really making it visual what Beethoven was about, and when we did it in Japan, of course, it was even more spectacular, with the Japanese chorus, the French dance group, and it was just us. And that's what Beethoven 9 is really about. I think you can send it somewhere to Papua New Guinea. They will relate to this music instantly, because there's something in Beethoven that really speaks to the roots of. And I said it in our last meeting when we talked about the Eroica and the combination of Duke Ellington. Well, that Beethoven has African blood, and you can feel it in his music. He is very rooted to where we all come from. Mm-hmm. And Beethoven 9 is a big statement of that.
Well, April 13, 14, we get to experience it up close and personal. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Maestro.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noam.
Thank you.